Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, marriage and family therapist Pete Russos, and attorney Sean Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 60 years of divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting. So, gentlemen, you know what they say about this time of year, don't you?
Happiest time of the year.
It's the happiest time of the year. I've also heard that the weather outside is frightful.
It's apparently true.
And when you're doing divorce, custody, parenting stuff, and then you combine that with holidays, that's kind of like combining matter and antimatter. Sometimes it can be fissile material. I remember when I was a litigating attorney, I don't litigate anymore, but when I used to litigate, I rarely was able to have just a peaceful holiday because there was usually some kind of hell breaking loose on a case. Christmas Eve, I remember going to the court ex parte Christmas Eve because mom alleged that the girl said that she'd been touched by daddy. So I'm having to go to court because there's this abuse allegation, only to find out later that this was cooked up just so that she can mess with Christmas. My own client. And so you go to court a little bit with egg on your face, and the professionals that are in the adversarial process, they're very happy to do the adversarial thing, but it's not exactly peace on earth sometimes. And so I thought, it'd be a really good idea for us to just kind of have a conversation about, well, how can you have peace on earth in this holiday season? And still co-parent your kids, and especially when there's like distance too.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of it is, what do you do when you're having the big Thanksgiving celebration or the big Christmas or whatever holiday you celebration, and there's extended family there, and
everybody has an opinion, right?
Everybody's got something to say about that bum you left, right?
Yep.
And what are the kids hearing? How do you protect the kids from extended family making comments that are unflattering about the other parent? So there's a lot to unwrap there, isn't there? No pun intended.
No.
I think that, and this is a topic that I've been doing this now with you guys, I think for 2 years. And in 2 years that I've been with you, we've had this, I think of this as the holiday special. And I think it's actually maybe one of the most important episodes that we do because of the importance and the impact, I think, on the holiday experience for children, for adults as well. So I'm glad that we're doing this.
Well, there's also a financial impact too. Like especially if you have to build in things like travel.
Yeah.
And also another thing I've seen is the level of giving.
Yes.
Being like a competition between the soon-to-be ex-spouses trying to do more to buy the children in a way. How dare you spend I can't afford to spend that kind of money, and you did this and you did that. I've heard that comment more than once.
Yeah, why did you get him an Xbox? I'm trying to reduce the screen time, and you bought an Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of little minefields there.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a good place to start would be just kind of generally, painting two pictures. We don't have Norman Rockwell here to paint our Christmas card, but there's the one that we all think about, and that is the Norman Rockwell picture where you have the nuclear family with Ward and June Cleaver there and a beautifully dressed turkey or ham or something, and the children looking delighted and happy, and maybe grandpa's there carving the turkey.
And Santa's coming down the chimney.
And Santa's coming down the chimney or however. And I think people want that. They want to preserve that. But then what happens is life comes along and Ward and June don't live in the same house anymore. So I think you could have like a new Norman Rockwell painting, which I've seen done with some effect. And that is, it's Christmas morning, and it was Dad's year to have the kids overnight for Christmas. I realize there are people that celebrate different kinds of holidays out there, but I'm just using Christmas as an example. Dad had the kids overnight for Christmas, and in the morning, Santa's going to be there, and Mom and Dad have carefully planned what the gifts are that are under the tree. And Mom comes, and it's agreed that she will arrive at 8:00 because we know the kids will be up at 4 a.m. And they will have an opportunity to open presents together and eat Christmas candy and cake or whatever the heck you got. And it's this beautiful thing. And then around lunchtime, Mom now takes the kids for her time for Christmas Day. And the kids never experience the parents fighting. It's just this nice thing where they can, as a binuclear family now, could experience the holiday. That's one picture. The other picture is Mom and Dad can't even talk to each other, let alone be in the same room. They're fighting and competing over what kind of Christmas gifts they're going to be giving. Mom is constantly texting during Dad's time, and Dad's constantly texting during Mom's time and calling on the phone. And when they're at each other, that's their separate poles at extended family. Extended family is kind of bad mouthing the other parent. And the kids kind of have this memory of Christmas as being a very negative experience, because that's usually when Mom and Dad are going to be fighting the most and where they're going to hear the most negative things about one of their parents. These are the two stories that we typically see, right? And we always say to people, you can write your own divorce story that your kids are going to tell about you. You can also write your own holiday story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think? I've kind of portrayed this stark image here, but these are the things that kids remember.
And even if you're not going through a divorce, the holidays are stressful.
Yes.
For some of the similar reasons. Did the present that I'm going to buy this person, is it going to be enough? Is it going to look too ostentatious? Oh my gosh, I've got to sit down with that cousin of mine who's always such a jerk and drinks too much and then, spouts off about politics. So it can be stressful if you're not going through a divorce. But then when you add the divorce and the newness of all these different combinations that have to occur, because everybody wants their time with the kids, right? And for good reason. But it just highlights this point where people just become so anxious, and people who are anxious, Pete, I believe, don't always perform to the top of their ability.
Yeah, it was, when Shawn, you were describing the two, those two scenarios, we'll call it, the Hallmark film versus the MTV film. What I found myself thinking about is, in order to have the Hallmark film, or in order to have what I would say, I love the way you describe it, because I think I think that's attainable. I think that is absolutely doable, and it should be what people hopefully aspire to. But it requires a really significant level of I think, self-management and commitment to an ideal that has to do with the experience that co-parents want for their children. And it requires a kind of selflessness and self-management that is, I think, unfortunately, not real common for so many families that are going through divorce, and the end of a nuclear family.
And that's a good point. And I also advise my clients to be self-aware.
Mm.
If you can pull it off where you can have some kind of togetherness on the holidays, by all means do it. But if based on tragic experience, that you and your ex-spouse getting in the same room for anything, let alone a holiday, is going to be a disaster, then please don't put your kids through that. Find some other way.
Yeah.
And I've also had whenever we talk like this, inevitably we get a comment from somebody, well, you don't understand. My spouse is a covert narcissist and a terrorist, and I'm not going to have Christmas with my abuser. Okay. Yeah, that's my point. Like, if it's not possible, then we got to find another way. But what's really the core here, don't you agree, Pete, is that we have to protect the children from the conflict.
I was going to say that. Get the focus back off what you want or what you need onto what story are your children going to tell about this Christmas and this Thanksgiving period? Mm-hmm. What do you want them to remember, 10 years from now? Mm-hmm. When someone asks them, what was it like when your mom and dad divorced?
And I've also seen this in mediations. In fact, I had a conversation the other day with somebody. We were talking about Christmas and Thanksgiving, and this person was like, I have never had a Christmas without my children. I'm not going to start now having a Christmas without my children. And then dad's like, well, we need to split them up. You get even years, I get odd years.
Yeah.
And for both parties, both parents, when you do that, which is the typical order, the court almost always grants some kind of order like that. If you're going to court, that's a loss. You are losing half of your children's holidays when you choose to get divorced, or if divorce is foisted upon you.
Unless, as was the case with my son, my wife's parents celebrated on Christmas Eve. And we always celebrated Christmas Day.
Yeah, so you could pull that off.
Spend the night there. I'd pick them up real early, take it to my house, and we'd have a Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. And they already had their big celebration, which was the Christmas Eve thing. Mm-hmm. So you might be able to work something out there if you talk about it. Mm-hmm. But I want Christmas. If you come out with that, well, no matter what kind of arrangements your family might be comfortable with, is going to be met with a negative response.
Well, that's why one of my questions will always be, okay, I hear you. You want every Christmas. What does Christmas look like? When does it start and when does it end?
Exactly. Yeah.
What is your Christmas going to be? And then you find out, oh, well, in your family, the tradition was Christmas Eve is the big deal. That's even when we open presents. That's the big deal. Yeah. And I don't really care about Christmas morning. And the other family, they really did care about Christmas morning. So then you could make that work. Everybody gets what they want.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, there's some conflict there. There's some rub.
Well, and I think that really that brings us back to that core question of what is it that these co-parents, what experience do they want for their children? Yeah. What's the story they want them to tell? I think to really ground themselves in that question, because I think often the choice dilemma that the parents who are in conflicted situations or conflicted co-parenting dynamics, the choice dilemma that they need to take fuller responsibility for is if somebody is going to be disappointed, better that it not be their children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are we going to disappoint? Are we going to disappoint the kids or the parents?
Yeah. Yeah. So if the history has been that in that case that you were giving an example of, Shawn, if so, that parent has never had a Christmas without their kids, and it would be really painful to forego that. But if insisting on having them is going to create tension for the kids, or is going to take away their enjoyment of the holiday, is that something that that parent is willing to accept and do?
And the other thing is when it's not your year.
Yeah.
Are you willing to let the other parent have the time without being interrupted? I actually saw this video. It was used in a litigation that I was involved in years ago where the kids were talking to mom on the phone during dad's Christmas time. And dad was videotaping the kids talking to mom and was trying to take the phone away and was saying, see, she's interrupting my time. And it became this big fight. And what had happened was, I talked to dad. I'm like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, she does this every time we have a holiday. It's my holiday, but she will be on the phone the entire time with the kids, with one of the kids. And so that, to me, that's a problem. And so what we ended up working out with that particular couple is we agreed to set times. This is when, okay, mom, you want to have a call during dad's time. Here's the time. It'll be for this period of time. And then the call will respectfully end. Instead of it being just free time calling whenever you want. And so that could be a real problem is when the other parent, it's your visitation time, but the other parent is there on a device.
We had that a problem with Alexa in a case we're still working a long time.
Oh, yeah.
With, right.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah. Or the kids would call during the middle of the day when they, if they didn't like what dad was
just
doing,
call mom.
Yeah. We'll just call mom and tell on dad. That's not good. And I've seen dads do it too. This isn't just the women doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pete, I have a question.
Yeah.
People become aligned, usually around family ties when it comes to divorce. And they want to be supportive, and you want them to be supportive of someone going through this, a family member. But at the same time, that often lurches, in my experience, into inappropriate things being said around the children that are not helpful. What advice do you have for clients that essentially have, got their pod together that's supporting them and helping them? How do you limit that? Because the people think they're doing the right thing. The children are part of their family too. So how do you limit that, or what can we do to help?
Well, I think one of the most important things, and this is a boundary that the co-parents have to set with these extended family members, but I think one of the most important things for co-parents to understand is that their children are composites, physiological/biological, emotional and psychological composites of them both. And when kids hear the other parent being disparaged, that is for them their own inner psychic kind of injury or wounding. And so, and again, I think that this is often a boundary that parents have to take on for themselves, to recognize that when the peanut gallery is, vociferous in their support in terms of disparaging the other person, that can be inflaming for them, but it's also injurious to their children. And they have to be the ones to let people know, look, that's not helpful. It's not supportive. I need you to refrain from that kind of language, certainly in front of the kids, but it doesn't help me either. But I think it really starts with parents understanding that it does their children no good if they disparage the other parent in front of them.
And also be careful, kids have really good ears.
Really good ears, yeah. Yeah.
And I've had kids tell me, my own children, oh, yeah, I remember when you and mom had that fight about whatever. I'm like, you heard that? That was mortifying to me because I thought we were having a private conversation. And, like couples do, sometimes there's arguments. And you have to be careful because, the kids will hear, even if you don't intend them to. And so, in my opinion, just fostering just a general culture of we're just not going to talk bad about the other person, period.
Yeah.
Is smart. And if you need to vent, that's what therapists are for.
Yeah.
But don't do it if there's any possibility that a kid's going to overhear something. Want that to be their Christmas memory. They thought they were going to wake up and find Santa, and they found grandma talking smack about their dad or their mom.
One of the things that in my work with clients, what's it like to hear these people who, clients who are well into adulthood, where the divorce happened decades before, still talking about how painful it was for them to hear, one parent disparaging the other parent, just the pain that it caused them. And so I think
and it can continue into adulthood. I think I told the story of a very successful female executive I had when I was a wealth manager, and every year she'd bring the same guy to our client appreciation dinner. And I knew it well enough. I said, "So are you guys ever going to tie the knot?" Her response was, "If I could have a wedding where I invited my mother and my father would come and vice versa, we would have married years ago."
Yeah.
And they divorced 20 years prior to this conversation.
So you made me think, there's this Jason Mraz song called Love for a Child. And if you ever get a chance, check out the lyrics. But there's this lyric that kind of caught my eye, and this conversation made me think of it. And he's basically, in this song, he's just reflecting on his parents' divorce and what life has been like and the struggles he's had. And he's, one of the verses, when the house was left in shambles, who was there to handle all the broken bits of glass? Was it mom who put my dad out on his ass, or the other way around? Well, I'm far too old to care about that now. And then another verse, it's kind of nice to work the floor since the divorce. I've been enjoying both my Christmases and my birthday cakes. And taking drugs and making love at far too young an age, and they never checked to see my grades. What a fool I'd be to start complaining now. And then the chorus is, what about taking this empty cup and filling it up with a little bit more of innocence? I haven't had enough. It's probably because when you're young, it's okay to be easily ignored. I'd like to believe it was all about love for a child. I think it kind of captures that feeling that people have. These kids, they're caught in the middle of this. It's easy for them to be ignored, what their real needs are.
Yeah.
And I've had people say, well, I'm going to go to war over custody of my kid because I love my child so much. And I said, okay, you love your child, and that's why you want to do this. So let's talk about what this that you're proposing here will do to your child.
Yeah.
It may be about love for the child, but what you're going to end up doing is causing more harm than good.
And I think that kids figure it out. Right. What I see is there are those couples where one of the co-parents is the much bigger offender, much more inappropriate in their behavior, and the other co-parent is able to manage themselves effectively and maintain their sense of integrity about what's appropriate and not engage. It's not this reciprocal kind of awful spiral. Those kids figure it out. They get to a point in life where they understand what was being done and who the offender was. And so I absolutely think it's important to remind parents of, how do you want to be seen by your kids in the future when they look back at how you're handling this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Take some time to really think about that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want your kids to think about at your funeral?
Yeah.
Gosh, it was always so awkward at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that every Passover was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you want them to say that?
Yeah.
And by the way, I haven't come across a kid yet that's upset by 2 birthday cakes.
Yeah. In fact, my son once said he felt sorry for his friends who were not divorced because they only got one Christmas.
They only got one Christmas.
Yeah.
The kids are far more resilient in many ways than the parents are. So
I think that's true, but at the same time, a lot of damage is done under that assumption too.
I agree. What I mean by that is
kids survive divorce and can be just fine.
Well, sir or ma'am, this angst that you're having about what's going to happen to your kids can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
based on what you choose to do. They're going to be okay without you for 1 year for Easter.
Mhm.
You may find it very painful, but they're going to be okay. What's not going to be okay for them is if they're exposed to some horrible bloody fight about it.
Mhm.
And I attended a seminar for certified specialists in family law put on by Judge Thomas Trent Lewis here in California. And he had us kind of visualize, do you have that memory of that time when your parents fought, whether they got divorced or not? Every child, and had us close our eyes and actually visualize this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a very good way to build empathy in these practitioners that are working these divorce cases. But he said, you feel the emotions when you really think about it. And so I did that. And I remembered a time when my parents were fighting, and they were married for 60 plus years until they both, until they passed away. But you feel that tightness in your chest, when you think about those arguments that you were exposed to. And I can't imagine what that must have been like had they divorced. And every child of divorce remembers the day they were told that the divorce was going to happen. And so
And how they were told.
And how they were told.
And that's another big thing, that where you start to build this new muscle. If you can sit down with them together and in a dispassionate way say, we are getting a divorce, it's nothing to do with you, we just can't be together anymore, we both love you, we're both going to be there for you when we wanted to tell you together, that sets things off on the right foot. But that's not always how it goes down.
Well, never mind. So let me share another visual for you. Child asks dad, can we get an Xbox this year for Christmas? And dad says, no, I can't afford to get you an Xbox because I'm paying so much in child support.
Talk to your mother.
Talk to your mother about it.
Yeah.
So what damage does that do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's putting the kids in the middle of a financial conversation that's inappropriate for them to be involved in.
In a way, it's putting them in this the kid has their own choice dilemma.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what I want is going to put stress on my father. It parentifies the child in a really destructive way.
Interesting. Yeah.
So the appropriate response in that situation is for the how the child. I was thinking of there's two things that need to happen for the parents, ideally the co-parents to talk about, okay, what is appropriate gift giving, based on their values, based on financial situations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then also depending on the age of the child, that may be one of those, well, write your letter to Santa moments where the here's the other thing that happens is the parents want to be respectful of the kid's belief system as it relates to, Christmas, for example. Does the child still believe in Santa Claus? And do the parents, are they willing to work together in order to support that? There's like this nuance to it. And so is it an age-appropriate response to a child based on them declaring something they want and what they believe happens on Christmas, honoring that? But then absolutely for the parents to work together and to talk about collaboratively, okay, what is going to happen vis-a-vis gifts? Can they come to some kind of consensus and a meeting of the minds so that they're able to share the child's joy? That it isn't one parent, hitting it out of the park and the other feeling like, wow, they really lost the opportunity, or they were being made to look bad. That's the worst scenario.
Yeah. Well, I had this one where mom was trying to limit screen time.
Yeah.
Thought she had an understanding with dad that they weren't going to get any more devices with screens.
Yeah.
And then dad supplies a new Xbox.
And is loved by the kids for doing it.
And the kids are like, well,
Now it
thanks,
puts
Mom, for
mom
the
in the
books.
situation of being the bad guy.
Yeah, the kids say to Mom, well, I guess thanks for the books and the socks. But boy, this Xbox is awesome.
Yeah, really. Can we bring it over to your house?
Right.
Yeah, so that's
not. We
another
just want to
aspect.
spend more time at dad's.
Yeah, it's more fun at dad's house. He's got an Xbox.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so this is another, I think, theme that we've talked about in other episodes: the dangers of unilateral decision making. And what is it that co-parents are willing to do, able to do, to as much as possible avoid unilateral decision making, and to be communicative with each other and to see if they can arrive at consensus.
Well, and sometimes there's things that you may not even realize can cause conflict or make the other person look bad. Like one of my favorite, I mean, it's not a good situation, but it's a good example. Kids ask Mom, can we go to Disneyland for Christmas? And Mom says, well, I think it's a great idea, but I better check with your dad first. So then the answer comes back, yes or no. What are the kids going to know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it puts dad in a horrible position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me, I would be delighted for you to have an Xbox, but I got to check with your mom first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you do it not even thinking. You're thinking that, oh yeah, I'm being really inclusive and making sure that they understand that I'm going to get on the same page with. But the problem is it can set up that other person.
Well, sometimes. And
so how do you answer that question?
Which question?
The one that was just posed.
Whichever one. Like, can we have Disneyland or can
I have an Xbox for Christmas?
Let me think about that.
I think I have to talk to your father. I have to talk to your mother about that.
Yeah, but the problem there, though, Pete, is
then it comes back parent. No, because you haven't taken a position.
You haven't taken a position.
Exactly. So but if you say, "Hey, I'd like to buy you an Xbox, but I need to check with your damn mother,"
right? Well, I would go so far as to say, just saying, I got to check with your dad about that can set up dad. I would just say, you know what? Maybe make it very clear. I don't know. I'm going to have to consult with your dad and we'll decide together. Make it very clear like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or just say, we're going to have to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It's so easy to go down the road. When I was, hearing this, it's like, well, that's inclusive. That's a nice thing to do. Talk to mom about it. But yeah,
I think I think modeling for the kids. I mean, the power of a statement like, "I'm going to have to talk to your parent," or "I want to talk to your father about that." I think for the kids to experience the parents, the co-parents as a unified front, that is an important, I think, kind of structure that is actually reassuring to kids. And so,
yeah, I agree with you.
Part of it is modeling that, and just making it clear. And and hopefully this is something that happens very consistently for the kids when they make a request, that the very consistent experience they have is that their parents are talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, how it is said, I think it's a neutral response vis-a-vis a decision. The one that I've heard that I think is really disturbing is, "Oh, if it were up to me, of course, but I need to talk." That absolutely.
But your mother's against this, so I'll do the best I can. But I'm pushing
no promises.
Yeah, really. You know what she's like.
You know what she's like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, Dad, I don't know what she's like. You're the one that divorced her.
Well, let me tell you some stories.
Let me show you this legal pleading.
Yeah, really. Let me show you her response that she filed with the court.
Well, I do think that there's a thread through all of this, and maybe I'm sounding repetitive, but just being really clear and mindful of your own angst.
Yeah.
What's stressing you out about the holiday? Is it something with the kids? Or is it really just something you have to deal with, as opposed to involving these innocent people? And something that you're struggling with may not be a struggle for them. I mean, I've seen it with like, oh, I have to have the house for the kids. And 9 times out of 10, I have to have the house for me, is what they're really saying, right, and what they're really feeling. But because I don't know, you know this better than me, Pete. When people are facing these crises in their lives and they have these very strong feelings, they may not even realize it's about them.
Well, it was something you said a few minutes ago, Shawn, when you mentioned that it could be, I'm trying to even remember what the context was, that you were talking about it being what was the term you used?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. And what I think we're also talking about is how often it really is self-serving. And people will parents will couch, I'm doing this for the children. The kids need this. And it really is about their interests, emotional interests, financial, whatever it is. And I think a willingness on the part of parents to really be introspective about not just understanding what it is that they want, but why they want it is really essential, so that they can delineate, all right, what of this is this really about me, or is this really about the kids? And I think that often it is.
And I think people sometimes have a really hard time looking at that.
Absolutely.
I've seen it. I can live under an underpass, but the children would be devastated if they had to, move from our street. And I remember talking one very long time ago, talking to children who, they asked me to talk to the kids. They were teenagers, and I talked to the kids, and after an hour meeting, I can sum it up in one sentence: we don't care where we live, just stop mom and dad fighting.
I've had that conversation so many times with children.
Yeah.
Some of them are like, oh, we're actually glad they're getting divorced.
Yeah.
Because they were terrible together.
And what took them so long?
But we don't want to be in the middle of their fight. Yeah. And I've seen that with adult children too.
Yeah.
Adult children don't have any of the legal protections. At least you can go to a court and prevent somebody talking bad about the other parent to a child. But once that child's an adult, you can say whatever you want. And I think it can cause tremendous damage.
Absolutely.
If you're not careful. But I think what you're talking about there, Pete, that introspection, that's really advanced work, is it? I mean, it's easier said than done to be able to.
No, absolutely. In fact, that's actually one of the things. It's interesting. I've had, and I guess the way that I would describe it is this kind of bittersweet reaction to our conversation today. In that, I think what we're talking about are really important aspirational goals for people. I think we're talking about on the one hand, we're representing what unhealthy co-parenting looks like. And at the same time, we are defining what healthy co-parenting can be. And I think that healthy co-parenting in the way that we're talking about is often really challenging. And it becomes even more challenging for people around the holidays because of all the other additional stressors, because of the meaning that this time of year can have. And
also the meaning it has to your other family members. In other words, you're not just concerned about how your experience is going to be, but what are my mom and dad going to think when little Johnny's not there on Christmas Eve? And so you're kind of balancing. Even if you're cognizant and being self-aware that this is not a good thing for kids to hear fights about, you're also balancing out your own stuff with your own other family members.
And competing needs. And you're literally having to navigate. And this is why I think it brings it back to where we started this conversation in terms of focusing on the kids and what is going to be best for the children. But it is, I think, often really challenging and difficult to have that kind of self-management, to have that level of introspection, and be willing to sacrifice on the part of parents a personal interest and their own, in some ways, their own enjoyment in order to do right by the kids. So there's another element of this that you were talking about, the interruptions that parents will make, calling when it's the other parent's time. But so really important to avoid that kind of behavior, but a step beyond that, or several steps beyond that, in terms of really being collaborative, is to, in a very full-throated way, encourage the children to have a really good time. I want you to have a great time. I hope this is a wonderful time for you with your mom or your dad, and I'll see you in 2 days, and we're going to have a great time. But to really be encouraging them to enjoy themselves, where it doesn't become a kind of competition, or worse, a test of loyalty. That put kids in an awful position when kids feel like they have to censor their joy to protect a parent's ego. That's just an awful position.
That's where we see, the parental alienation behaviors that cause so much trouble. And that is that we actually see the kids more aligning with the less emotionally healthy person. Simply because they feel less safe in that relationship. So they feel like they have to align.
Yeah. Or they feel they have to take care of that parent.
Yes.
Or they're parentified, like what Pete was saying. And it just causes untold damage. So, I mean, love for a child, right? Be very mindful, I think. Just kind of, nothing activates the inner child quite like a holiday, does it?
And it's funny who came to mind in this moment. Ebenezer Scrooge. and I'll tell you why I think he came to mind. I love the story of A Christmas Carol because it's a redemption story. And so another way I think for us to talk about or to think about this holiday period is this is a chance for co-parents to come from what's best in them, to collaborate with each other in a way that is about giving their children a wonderful and loving experience. This is a chance, if in previous years they've struggled, this is a chance for them to redeem themselves. It's never too late to improve behavior, I think. There's always value in that. So if they struggled previously, what are they willing to do different this time? To do right by their children. And in the process, to hopefully give themselves a fuller sense of integrity about the way they're showing up in their co-parenting.
Yeah. And God bless us all, everyone.
Absolutely.
You know what else comes to my mind? Chevy Chase from Christmas Vacation. And why was he acting so bizarrely throughout that whole holiday? Those of you that have seen the movie, where he spends more than he should on a swimming pool, and he goes insane with the Christmas lights. And there's that scene where he gets locked in the attic, and he finds the old family films from Christmas, and he's crying like a baby up there stuck in the attic, freezing to death, watching these old films. And he was trying, what that scene showed is his bizarre behavior was him trying to recreate what he had idealized in his mind as the perfect holiday for his kids. And in so doing, destroyed Christmas.
I've never seen the film, but as you were describing his behavior, I wondered if it was due to like tainted figgy pudding or something.
Well, there's something about a cat that electrocuted himself. But no, it's a silly film. But there's some,
Shawn,
there's some wisdom.
I apologize for making the joke because I think you're making a really important point, which is, part of this is the fantasy, if you will, that we have about how things should go, or how things were, and I think
how I idealized my childhood memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Well, there's
I
a
think
lot to
we've done
unpack
it
there.
again.
Huh? Sorry, Mark, I talked over you.
I just said I think we did it again.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would wish everybody the very best holiday that they can have. These are difficult times to be going through divorce. This kind of makes things more intense just because of the requirement of engaging other people in your life. And what does everyone say when you show up and you haven't seen them for a year?
Yeah.
How are you doing? What's going on? I hear you're getting a divorce. And it's like, you better have some prepared answers ready to go, because otherwise you will just lapse into your default mode, which may not be the most helpful.
Can I also add just one last piece is if I'm thinking about those families where this is their first year, their first round of holidays where they're living apart, and to just be aware of the grief process that I think people go through when they're transitioning in those ways. And it's not like this is, the first one and then they're done grieving, but to really make room for healthy grieving in the midst of their holiday.
That's well said, Pete. Cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's pain involved in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's normal to feel this way. I think a lot of times people feel like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's normal to grieve when there's a divorce. And it's appropriate.
And important work. That grief work is vitally important.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Because you can't really get to acceptance of the situation until you've gone through that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, one thing that people tell me after they've hired me or they're working with me, and I'm sure you guys may have experienced this too, is I feel like working in a peaceful resolution process, I feel like there's hope for my family. And maybe that's a good way to end this discussion, is that the holidays are supposed to be this hopeful, peace on earth kind of experience. And just let people know that, yeah, there is some hope. It does get better. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. Your kids are going to be okay. And you will make mistakes.
But the future of your relationships will not turn on this one holiday season.
Well said. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.